Behavioral Sciences, Lecture 6, Identity and Personality. Before we begin our discussion on identity and personality, let's go over some definitions, starting with self-concept, which is the sum of the way we describe ourselves. It entails our present self, who we used to be, and who we might be in the future. Note, this is largely how we see ourselves, so this is clearly subjective. Identities are individual components of our self-concept related to groups in which we belong. These could be religious affiliation, sexual orientation, ethnic, national affiliations, cultural associations, etc. Self-esteem is our evaluation of ourselves. The closer our actual self is to our ideal self and ought self will mark how high our self-esteem is. The ideal self is who we want to be, and the ought self is who others want us to be. Self-efficacy is the degree to which we see ourselves as being capable at a skill or situation. A low self-efficacy will lead to learned helplessness, which is the result of constantly being placed in hopeless scenarios. These are all things that you should be mindful of while you study. You gotta keep your self-esteem high and know that you can do it. Locus of control. These are self-evaluations that refer to the way we characterize the influence in our lives. People with internal locus of controls see their success and failures as personal things, or results of their own characteristics and actions. People with external locus of controls generally perceive outside factors as having more of an influence than their own personal factors. Now that we've gone over some of the basic definitions, let's look at the formation of identity. Sigmund Freud famously proposed the psychosexual stage of personality development. Based on the tensions caused by the libido, or sexual drive, this will manifest and create personality traits at every stage of our life. Erikson, on the other hand, suggested that personality developed from conflicts that occurred during our life. These could be trust and mistrust, autonomy, shame, doubt, etc. These conflicts are a result of decisions that we are forced to make about ourselves and the environment around us at each phase of life. Kohlberg decided to take a look at moral development, which is the approaches that individuals make to resolve moral dilemmas. He developed 6 stages, which were divided into 3 main categories. In this next bit, let's take a look at all 3. The first is pre-conventional morality, which is pre-adolescent thinking. This entails the first and second stage. The first is obedience, which involves avoiding punishment. The second is self-interest, or gaining reward. These are the forms of morality that children generally understand. The next major phase is conventional morality, and this has stages 3 and 4. This begins in early adolescence, and it's based on understanding and accepting social rules. Stage 3 is conformity, which is the seeking of approval of others. Stage 4 is law and order, which is concerned with maintaining social order. This obviously takes a higher level of cognitive awareness than childhood. The last grouping is post-conventional morality. This is comprised of stage 5 and 6. This is not achieved by everyone, but it's based on social mores, which often conflict with laws. Stage 5 is social contract, which views moral rules as a means to ensure greater good, regardless of the other laws and orders of the time. Stage 6 is universal human ethics, which states that decisions should be made in consideration to abstract principles. Not everyone thinks on this level, which is why Kohlberg stated that not everyone reaches a post-conventional morality. Vygotsky's theories had to do with zones of proximal development. These describe skills that a child has not yet mastered, and usually the child will require the skills and tutelage of a more knowledgeable person. These theories revolve heavily around imitation and role-taking, which is a common way that children learn from others. How we identify ourselves often is associated with reference groups, which are groups that we compare ourselves to. Your self-concept will vary depending on how an individual weighs their qualities against the reference group versus other groups. Many theories state that this is where our personality ultimately comes from. Finally, let's go into personality. There are various perspectives on personality, and it really hasn't been shown that anyone is absolutely true or complete, which is why all of these persist. The psychoanalytic perspective states that personality is a result of unconscious urges and desires. There are many varying theories regarding this personality. The most noteworthy supporter of psychoanalytics is Freud himself, who is pictured to the right. Freud suggested that inside your mind you have three components: the id, which is your base urge of survival and reproduction; the superego, which is the idealist and perfectionist; and the ego, which is the mediator between the id and superego. Basically, the conscious mind. Freud states that your mind uses defense mechanisms to reduce stress caused by the id and superego, which is where your personality comes through. How your id, superego, and ego react and respond and interact with each other is what dictates your personality traits. Carl Jung, on the other hand, assumed that a collective unconscious linked humans together. He suggested that personalities are influenced by archetypes. He saw the human as a mandala, which is a Buddhist symbol of the universe. It basically states that the self seeks a unity in itself, and that it reconciles opposites to promote the harmony. So you have all these archetypes inside of you that you're running off of that are somewhat universal among all humans, and you try to reconcile them all. Try to combine them and make them whole. Here are some examples of Jungian archetypes. The persona is the mask worn in public. The anima is the feminine, sex-inappropriate behaviors in males. Conversely, the animus are the masculine, sex-inappropriate behaviors in females. The shadow is responsible for the unpleasant and socially reprehensible thoughts, feelings, and actions in our consciousness. Obviously, how we choose to act on these is what dictates our personality. The self is the intersection between the collective unconscious, personal unconscious, and conscious mind. Basically, what makes you, you. There are many examples of Jungian archetypes, but here are just a few. The humanistic perspective emphasizes the internal feelings of healthy individuals as they strive towards happiness and self-realization. Examples that rely on this perspective are Maslow's hierarchy of needs and Rogers' therapeutic approach of unconditional positive regard. Basically, the theory of positivity. Type and trait theories. These believe that the personality can be described as a number of identifiable traits that have specific behaviors. Examples of these are ancient Greek humors, somatotypes, Myers-Briggs type inventory, and etc. These are kind of fun to take, so if you get a chance, I would suggest you do them just for your own edification. The social cognitive perspective states that individuals interact with their environments in cycles called reciprocal determinism. It states that our thoughts, feelings, and environment all interact with each other to determine our behavior, and that people are molded by their environment according to their personalities. This relies on the premise that the environment dictates who we are. If you've heard of B.F. Skinner, you'll see a little similarity here. The social cognitive perspective largely relies on B.F. Skinner's work. The behaviorist perspective is based on the concepts of operant conditioning. It states that personalities are learned behaviors that are learned from previous experiences with reward or punishment. Lastly, the biological perspective states that behaviors are simply a result of genetic expression. It's the result of biological factors and their manifestations in their brain. So, long story short, how you were born and how your brain works is what dictates the personality that you will manifest. Clearly, there are a lot of different perspectives on personality, and it's important to take note of all of these during test day. That'll do it for this lecture. Please join us in the next one.